So yes, George's question. George is there. Okay, so I'll read his question. Is feminine intuition an attribute of Shiva? Specifically, I'm thinking of times when being present and working to connect with someone where I realize something turns out to be true, but I can't articulate the logical steps that lead me to the insight. I notice that women tend to make these leaps of intuition more frequently than I do. What really intrigues me are the following questions. I don't get those insights when I'm in engineering mind, and so I'm curious about the relationship to the intermarriage. Note, I get them more now due to core energetics, workshops at Shalom Mountain, Zen, so forth. How does as in without, so without apply when such insights happen? Does working on the intermarriage help? Assuming the answers to 1 and 2 are non-trivial, what can we notice about the role of the intermarriage in relationships where both individuals are bringing their masculine and feminine aspects? Yes. This is a very interesting question about the relationship of intuition to finding the truth. And this is a particularly interesting time to be talking about this issue of finding the truth, when it seems that no one's really clear what's the truth anymore. It's really fascinating to me that I think it's partly the result of the internet, actually, because you can go on the internet and find any truth you wish. I mean, if you have a particular opinion and you want to get support for it, you can find that somewhere on the internet. And so then you think, aha, I've confirmed that that's the truth. But somebody else is confirming that something exactly the opposite is the truth. So it's thrown us into a bit of a tizzy. Another way of thinking of that is that society used to operate on the basis of certain agreements. And everybody watched one of a few network television channels and heard pretty much the same thing from all of them. And so there was an agreement that these things are true and this way of doing things is the best and so forth. But that's a very different world from the one we're in now, where very few people watch network television. And there are many, many, many channels on other television arrangements. So, as well as the internet, so that you can be part of a group who believes a certain thing that maybe very few other people believe. So we've kind of had the luxury, quote unquote, because there were certainly unhappy results of that kind of unanimity in public opinion, because sometimes it could be way off and no one knew the difference. Now, there is no illusion of agreement. We rather are all finding our own truth, which in a way is great, but it makes it difficult to function collaboratively often. So, so yeah, how do we find out the truth? And that is, as Garo was saying, the purpose of a satsang. We're here to search as a group for the truth. So George brings up the interesting question of, well, is this somehow the purview of our feminine side rather than our masculine side? And I would have to say that you can make a case for either, because certainly there is a kind of generally accepted idea that women are more intuitive. I think it would be more correct to say the feminine is more intuitive, but and we all have a feminine side to ourselves, so we all have that capacity for, quote, intuition. But also, as far as the intermarriage goes, Shiva, the other half, Shakti and Shiva, Shiva is known as having this Viveka, which is power of discrimination, this and not this. And so that's a part of the masculine too. And maybe that's what George means by his engineering mind. So there are two different ways of coming at the truth, at least two. But one is through kind of sharp intellect, and the other is through intuition, or a hunch, as my teacher used to call it. And he was not too fond of the whole hunch route, because he said, sometimes you can have a hunch and it turns out not to be true. But he says, if you practice meditation and you learn to go to what he called the infinite library, then you can establish experientially the truth for yourself. So that's the path of yoga and Tantra, is going within to discover the truth, not using a hunch and not using pure intellect, but rather using personal experience. So this is a third option, you might say. And my teacher always said, when you make contact with that infinite library interiorly, then it's never wrong, because you're going to the truth. You're going to the universal bank of knowledge. You might also say you're making connection with the oneness, the highest consciousness, which is the awareness of unity, and in that unity is everything. So everything is at your disposal in terms of knowing. But that's not compatible with the ego. And that's not actually a faculty of logic. It's rather a state of consciousness, or a structure of consciousness, that brings into availability everything that is going on in the universe, that has gone on in the universe, and probably everything that will go on in the universe. And that kind of knowing is surefire. Unfortunately, most of us have not acquired that state, but it is there, and it is available, and it is a possibility. So, yeah, so I don't know, George, that might give you a different framework to kind of think about it in. And yeah. So your question about what does it have to do with the intermarriage, I think is very important, because whatever you're talking about, whether it's more one of the assets of the masculine or an asset of the feminine, those are both available to all of us if we are willing to connect with the contrasexual, or the other side of our brain, so to speak. And actually it is related to the brain and the sides of the brain, because when we're in our logical state of mind, we're actually in the left brain, which means the right side of the body, and that's more the Shiva aspect of us. And the Shakti aspect is the other side of the brain. And as many of you know, you do have a choice about which to activate, and that has to do with which nostril you're breathing through. So when you breathe through the right nostril predominantly, you're actually accessing the left brain is more active, and you're accessing your capacity for logic and reason and engineering mind. And when you activate the left nostril, then that's the right hemisphere, and that's the feminine, which is more creative thinking and to some extent intuitive thinking. But until you go to those higher structures of consciousness, like what's called the integral structure of consciousness, your conclusions are fallible until you do that. Whether you are accessing that conclusion through the use of your right brain or through the use of your left brain. So the intermarriage of bringing those two into a working relationship is a prerequisite for moving into the integral structure of consciousness and the more expansive awareness that opens the doors to that infinite library. So
there's one more.
George, do you have any follow-up
Yeah.
question to that?
I guess.
You go ahead.
Just a clarification. It sounds to me like at the end there, you were really saying the intermarriage is one of the stepping stones to getting to the truth.
Yes. Getting to a more reliable access to the truth.
Yes.
And it's not the full journey there, but it is a stepping stone, as you said. So that's something that all of us can work on and explore and learn about and get comfortable with that intermarriage. So that's a very important step in development.
But also then there's the going a little bit different point of view, but the aspect of when you're working with someone, you also have to be aware of their intermarriage to some extent. Was part of the question.
It's not so easy to know about others.
No.
It's much clearer when we look inside ourselves. So certainly how other people participate in a discussion will be a product of how they have how far along they've gotten with this intermarriage thing. But it's still, it may be a limitation or it may be an asset depending on where they are, but it's hard to draw directly from that a clear understanding of where they are. But that the important thing is for us to know where we are and to keep moving in that journey of accessing of living the intermarriage.
Yeah.
You know, being able to draw with equal facility from either side of that intermarriage. And that really is badly needed at this point, I think, in terms of where we are, where our planet is. The intermarriage is the current frontier, I believe. And we're seeing a lot of things going on that relate to that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, knowing what's the truth would be nice to know more. And you know what troubles me is that I've noticed that some people seem to have assumed that you know, you can never know the truth, so you just pick something and believe it. You know.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's true. I think you can know more. You know, the more you know and the more you understand, the more you explore things, the more facts you get, the better you can actually draw conclusions about what's true. Even if they're somewhat faulty conclusions, you can get pretty close. So I think being a total relativist is a shaky proposition and not a good idea. Because we all need to have some sense of what's true in order to function in the world and to function in relationship to our parents and our families and our children and society. So it behooves us to search diligently and learn more and learn how to ferret out what is more likely to be true and what is pretty clearly falsified. So that there is, you know, this is, we have the capacity to function scientifically. And science is, you gather data and then you draw conclusions, but they are tentative conclusions. They're always hypotheses,
yeah,
or they're theories, but they're not laws. And that's where we see today's science has devolved into pseudoscience, because you'll hear people say, well, that breaks the laws of physics, or that breaks the laws of biochemistry, or whatever. Well, there aren't really any laws. And even though we have frequently in the last 1,000 years thought that we, you know, knew exactly how things were, and we've discovered consistently and repeatedly that we got new data, and that changes what is the most likely theory. So the theories should evolve. They shouldn't be static.
Mm-hmm.
So there's plenty of room for learning more, and then and gradually, as we make theories on the basis of new information, we move more and more toward the truth. And the truth sometimes changes, conditions change, and what was true before is not true now. So it's also a dynamic thing.
Yeah.
So those of us who are not yet enlightened can still be functional. We don't have to know the absolute truth all the time, but we can certainly learn to find our way to more and more truth. And that's an ongoing journey. And it's also fun, and it's like an exploration.
Yes.
And, you know, we don't have, I mean, might be sort of spoil our fun if we knew all the truth right now. What would we search for? So yeah, thank you for that question. Do you have any follow-up questions?
I don't think so. We'll yield the floor to someone else. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, George. Great question, great theme for talking today. Who else might have stimulated some question in the minds of other people who are listening?
So how do we navigate all those that say they're speaking the truth?
Well, we have to be respectful that other people have their own perceptions and have their own truth. I mean, it's not quite correct to call it their own truth, but it's like their own position in terms of getting closer to the truth. And as long as we are in this fallible position, we could be wrong and they could be right. So it's worth hearing how they got there and how they drew that conclusion.
If they're willing to share that information.
Well, yeah, if they're willing to share that information. And some may not be. But yeah.
But it's also not just following, like just following without a lot of inquiry and
yeah.
Like,
well, if you're going to assume that another person is much closer to the truth than you are, then you need to be sure that that's the kind of person you want to, that it is the kind of person you can trust to be, you can trust what he says, and you can assume that he knows something.
But they may be an expert in the field, or maybe an expert in that research, or.
And certainly experts can be totally wrong.
Right.
So this is where the Western ideas and the Eastern ideas are very different, because the Eastern idea is, well, you find a teacher, and then, but you evaluate the teacher, and to see, is this really someone who you can trust to guide you? And so how does one evaluate someone that's more advanced than you are? One of the criteria is, can they sit still? Or are they always restless? If they're always restless and moving around and don't take what they say too seriously, not a good person to have as a teacher. A teacher should be able to be composed and steady and focused and relaxed and serene. You know, and then there are other criteria too. You know, how do they conduct themselves? Are they loving, and are they positive? Are they clear-headed, or are they fly off into tantrums and, you know, many things? But the simplest is watch how they sit and how they inhabit their body. If there's not some serenity there, they're probably not going to be a good teacher. But we in the West don't have teachers. You know, we don't, that's kind of anathema, the whole idea. Well, you know, you're going to let someone tell you what to do? You're going to put your faith in some person, you know? They don't know any more than you do. We're all teachers. That's what I hear people say. Yeah, you know, we're all teachers. Well, that's true in some extent. You know, you can learn a lot by watching people's foibles. But But, you know, there are people who have been trained and taught and practiced and developed the capacity to be aware on a larger scale, and who can be helpful. And, you know, especially when you're treading a spiritual path, you need sometimes guidance. And again, you know, that flies against and flies in the face of the assumption that, well, just go online, you'll find a place, you'll find out what to do. You can, you know, who needs a teacher when you have the internet? But as I said before, you can find out so many different opinions, and maybe one of those is right for you, but how do you know? So we talked about this, I think, on a recent Zoom call. I can't remember which one it was, about, you know, if you're doing pranayama and working with breath and energy, it says in the books you should have a teacher. Is that really true? Do you need a teacher? And it was my opinion that you do. Because you are intervening in subtle events inside your body-mind complex that, if they aren't done carefully and skillfully, can actually do harm instead of good. And I've seen that happen. So I think, yes, you need someone who's spent a lot of time working with that and has a feeling for it to guide you. So, you know, the Eastern idea is more organized around a spiritual goal, because the Eastern concepts tend to be that what the main focus in life is the spiritual path. At least that's much more common in the East than in the West, where people are suspicious of spiritual path and suspicious of teachers and suspicious of anything that, especially people that tell them things they don't want to hear. Oh no, well, I don't need advice from him. That's not what I wanted to hear. So I'll find a teacher who will tell me what I want to hear. Yeah, it's very interesting. Yes, Arabella.
I just have a little anecdote. About a month ago, in a one-on-one with a student, this particular person said, "I got really pissed off at you last week." And I said, "Great." Because if I'm not pissing you off once in a while, I'm probably not taking enough risks. I don't mean like, you know, what's the word? I'm not antagonistic or anything like that, but something I said triggered something in this person. And I thought, good, you know, every once in a while, the person that you are looking to for guidance needs to challenge you a little bit.
Of course.
In a loving way.
Right. Yeah. And if they, otherwise it's negligence. You see, I mean, you know, parents who never tell children no are not parenting very well. Parents who say no all the time are even worse. You know, so there has to be a lot of yeses and occasionally a no in order to be giving any guidance. Otherwise, it's meaningless. It doesn't carry any impact. Great. So you might think about what are the truths I've been seeking? Have I been on a quest for any particular truth or truth about any particular thing? And if so, what is that? Like, where am I putting my energy? Where am I putting my search? Where's my search pointed? Or do I have one?
If I know what truth I am seeking, what's the difference between knowing the truth that I'm seeking and actually living that truth?
Well, finding the truth is the first step. So you may have questions that you need to have answered or have some tentative answer before you try to live it. So I think a lot of us haven't really verified the truth enough to proceed with trying to live it. And that's that leaves us in a bit of a quandary, because we feel it's hard to feel a sense of direction in that case. So I sort of suspect that everybody's searching for some truth or other, whether it's conscious or not is another matter. How conscious are you of the truth that you're seeking? Has it really become a conscious search, or is it just something rattling around in the back of your mind?
This is Karen. And
yeah. Hi, Karen.
Hi. I'm feeling completely baffled, because this is really the first time that I've heard that that's what we were doing, was searching for the truth. And I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know that's what we were doing.
Well, I mean,
and now I'm like, I wonder what does that mean? What does that look like? Like, can you give me an example of a truth that we might want to search for? Or so.
Well, my teacher always said there are three important questions. Where did I come from?
Oh.
Why am I here?
Oh.
And where am I going?
Oh, so that would be the truth that we're searching for.
I mean, those would be top priority.
Okay, then I can see that pretty active in my life then.
Yeah.
In my whole life. Okay. Thanks. I guess I just never heard it put that way, like we're searching for the truth, and I thought I really totally missed the boat on this one.
Well, maybe not. So yeah, where did I come from? Why am I here? And where am I going?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the questions boil down to that, or they're related to that. So
okay.
Searching for those answers is pretty important.
And that would be considered searching for the truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, knowing the truth has this, or learning something that you feel is true, that's important and related to those basic questions, is a very satisfying thing, and a very powerful thing, very important thing, that it can change how you feel about being alive. And you know, it's having a direction. Without knowing the truth, how do you have a direction?
Yeah. Yeah, that totally makes sense to me.
Yeah, so the search for truth is, you know, people have been doing that forever. And most of the wise men agree that the search for truth has to be carried out, especially within yourself, in your own inner world. Though information can come from other places that can be helpful. But the inner search is really the foundation for the whole process.
Yeah.
And so that's why satsang is actually considered essential. I mean, I don't know whether it's the Yoga Sutras, but I know some of the yogic scriptures are very pointed about that. That you cannot progress on the path of yoga without satsang, without a group to support you, who is also looking for the truth. Because otherwise, the things that you are doing out in the world take you in contact with so many people. And if that's the kind of influence, random connections, then you start to feel confused and aimless and lose your direction. So you need a support group, which that's what satsang is, really. It's a group of people who are also searching the truth and support you in your search and collaborate with you in your search. And that's really essential in life. And in this day and time when we're social isolation is the catchword, it's kind of hard to have satsang. So I guess you would say this is a bit of a miracle that we can all be together when we're not together. We're not allowed to be together. We can't be together. We can't. We're quarantined, or we're practicing social distancing, or whatever. This is the miraculous satsang that is happening but can't happen. So we're fortunate.
Yes, very. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, George.
So in some ways, just to follow up on Karen's question, it felt like self-awareness was a real part of the truth that we're seeking for.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, there are many signals that come through our body and through living in the world, many bits of data. And if we're not attuned to the inner world, our inner world, then we miss those cues, we miss those little clues that can lead us toward the truth. So self-awareness is very much the key, and to all the spiritual work and good health and many other things. Unfortunately, we're generally not trained to be self-aware. Our training is in being aware of things out in the world, how to be aware of this, or how to read that, or how to hear this, but not to attend to the inner signals. And so that's a handicap for us who are raised that way.
There's also the aspect of the signals coming from without and us misinterpreting them, being triggered, for example, because of our own history.
Yeah, and so we have to learn what are our triggers and what do we react to, and what do we might ignore because it causes an emotional response, and how to step around that and get the information anyway. But without the inner awareness, that's not going to happen.
I have more, if you don't mind.
Please.
So the three things: where did I come from? What is my reason for being here, and where am I going? So outside of that, would it be more of an expanded questioning of like, what are we as like humans? Where did we come from? Where are we going? Like as we're seeking the truth within ourselves of where that is, does that then expand outward to those around us and the world and then the universe and whatever?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it sort of comes the other direction. Like, the more I can understand about the world and the more I can pick up signals and the more I can know what I can rely on, then I can get more clues about who am I and why am I here and where am I going. There's lots of, so many things we hear that are taking us on a tangent. So we need to know, is that really true, or is that just what people are saying, or was there a misunderstanding? Right now we're having this huge paradigm shift in medicine and trying to understand better what's the truth about how the human body functions. And all of our teachings and all of our thinking in that field has been based on the idea of survival of the fittest and competition and threats from outside. Like, the world is really hostile. It's full of things that will destroy us. So our immune systems have to be on guard. And, all these, the microbes in the environment are dangerous. And so we're really at war with them. We're at war with the environment because it will destroy us. It will make us sick. And and now more data is coming up to suggest that, well, that's not really true. That we, by and large, the microbes in the environment are benefiting us. And by and large, the different creatures, plants and animals in the world are collaborating more than they're competing. Mm-hmm. Like we're shocked to discover, I was shocked to discover that most trees are actually sending out roots that connect with other trees, so that if those trees need nutrients and they have them, they share with the trees. Well, that wasn't the way we were taught. We were taught that, well, the trees are all fighting for their little bit of soil and they have to overcome the others or they'll be choked out. And so that has a huge effect on how we deal with forestry or how we deal with biology. and so, that whole paradigm of competition and being at war with things is about fear. And, we're not safe. We're in a world that wants to do us in. and that's not really supported by the data. So when we clear that up, we find out more truth about that. And if we are convinced that, oh, wait a minute, that's not true, then that removes a huge piece of fear from our life. And then our ability to pursue the spiritual path is much more supported by the knowledge that, oh yes, the universe is supporting me in this, rather than, well, I have to fight to get it. Because I have to fight to get it is an ego position and a fear position. and a war position. So our wars come from that. So all this kind of thinking, getting more truth around that can shift how we relate to the world, and we can understand that the world is, the world loves us. It's not that we have to fight the world to survive. So this is one little piece of information that can shift our ability to use our energies in other ways than fighting and competing, and and that can help us answer those basic questions and help us shift how we think about life and why we're here and where we came from. So yeah, I mean, it does go out in all directions, and those are complex questions that there's many facets to the answers and many bits of information that have to be put in place for us to begin to answer those questions. So the search for truth is many faceted, and yet it all comes back to support our direction, our deeper direction. We have habit to contend with, because when we have a habit, a habitual way of looking at the world, well, we've adjusted to that, and we've accommodated that, and we've learned how to manage with that way of thinking. And take away my enemies, and then I'm confused, and I'm like, wait a minute, bring them back. I knew what to do. I knew how to fight. What are you telling me? I don't need to fight? Well, no, I don't get it. You pull the rug out from under me. So we got attached to our ideas and our conclusions, and we're reluctant to let them go. So that becomes an obstacle on the path that really only the truth can remedy. And that doesn't mean that we're going to welcome the truth. But we look for it, and then, we try to accept it when we find it. John, do you have a question? No, okay. It doesn't have to be a question. It can also be a comment or a share your experience around some of these issues. That's very welcomed. Happy to see you all. Carlos and Bradford and Jody and Hans, well, everybody. Ellen. So, oh, Karen, did you want to say something more? No. You were lit up. I don't know why.
Well, I heard a thing about this current virus and about viruses in general, that they're actually kind of like, I mean, they're everywhere, and they're kind of like good for us. Like they update us to be able to be in the world better. And I just thought that was an interesting, that, of course, what does not kill you makes you stronger, but
yeah, I mean, that's
friends.
Yeah. Well, I quoted Lynn Margulis, who was a famous, she's no longer living, but she was one of the founders of virology and a great virologist. And she said, her summary was, we are our viruses, because the viruses are actually shuttling, they're not, no, I say that wrong. The viruses are actually being shuttled around to move genetic information into different places to be used by us. And that shapes who we are and reshapes who we are and modifies who we are. And so our viruses are the tool that we use to send those messages and bring that genetic information from one place to the other. And so they are a very important part of us. Or you might say, as she said, that, you know, we are them in a very profound sense. And we are also other microbes who are carrying out the metabolic processes that make our lives possible. So, you know, the whole, what's interesting here is that the whole concept of who we are in face of the evidence needs to shift so that we're not these separate beings. We're actually a kind of tentatively delimited part of one whole thing. And that tentative delimitation can shift and change. So the illusion that we're absolutely separate beings is not holding up well to the evidence. I mean, the evidence is undercutting that delusional assumption. So that when we do battle with other parts of the universe that are really part of who we are, it's kind of crazy, actually. You know, and so what we call our environment is actually part of us too. And the fact that we think we should control the environment, we should, you know, remove things that can hurt us, is all fear-based stuff. You know, well, we have to kill the bears because they could kill us. We have to kill the wolves. We have to kill the, oh, you know, you name it. We got to kill them all. And so we're doing that, actually. We're in this period of species dying, but basically from our actions, not so much. Not all of them are intended to be killed, but we aren't managing our lives in a way that allows them to continue to live. So we have this extinction thing going that has not happened to this degree in millions of years. So apparently we're at war with the whole of nature because we're killing it off. You know, it would look that way. I guess we could say, well, we didn't mean to, but actually when you look, it seems that we do mean to, that we're afraid. We're afraid of bacteria, we're afraid of plants, we're afraid of wild nature. Because, you know, there are things out there that could kill you, and so we're going to kill them first. And that's a really primitive kind of thinking that passes for sophistication these days. But we need to get over it, is the bottom line. And so that's finding the truth that we're really, we're part of a whole. We're an indistinct part of a whole. Our partness is not as important as the wholeness, put it that way. And if we could get that, we could live much more happily and peacefully in the world. And we could really live in a paradise, basically. Because the earth is a beautiful place, and it's potentially has been and can be a paradise. But as we destroy, intentionally or unintentionally, more and more parts of it, then we also cannot survive. So we're destroying ourselves, because we are, that is us, that's all us. Like we are our viruses, we are the environment, we are connected. It's one functioning organism. We are part of a ecosystem. And you kill off the other parts of the ecosystem, you perish. So, you know, this is our, and I don't want to resort to fear to try to get rid of a fear-based approach to the world, but it is a serious thing that we're doing, and we ought to stop doing that so that we can enjoy our lives. And connecting with nature is not connecting with this different thing. It's remembering that we are a part of it. You know, it's like, oh, we should go out and be connected with nature. Okay, we are hiding in a little box, pretending that we're not connected to nature. We're already connected to nature. Let's just remember that and enjoy it. So these are some of the truths that I think can make an impact on how we live and how we enjoy being alive. And then we might be in a position to understand, why am I here? And where did I come from? And where am I going? Where do I want to go? What is human life about? You know, but human life at war with parts of itself isn't a good environment to understand and answer those questions. So anyway, thank you for listening. And thank you for asking questions, and thank you all for being here. And I guess our time is up. So we will keep coming.
Much for sticking with us through our little casualty. And next week we'll be back to meditation, and stay tuned for an announcement. We'll see who leads that. Not sure yet who will do that. So yeah, go ahead and unmute yourself, and we'll say goodbye. And thank you
so much.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, all.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, everybody.